Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Light Gate, last Monday in July. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are on Roku, Facebook, and YouTube. We have a wonderful show tonight. I'm really excited about this particular show. It's going to be interesting. Oh my goodness. So get ready to put your questions in and let us know what you're thinking and ask away. So let's get rolling. Here you go, Preston.
Thanks, Dolly. Yeah, if you want your questions answered, first come, first serve, because always by the end of the show, we're scrambling. We try. And I think we do pretty good. But yeah, welcome to the Light Gate. It's episode 66. We've been going for about a year and a half now. Got some great guests lined up. Have an awesome guest tonight. I'm super excited to speak with him. And I, of course, am your host, Preston Dennett, author, researcher, and experiencer too, to some extent. Not quite as much as my lovely co-host, Dolly Safran, who's had very extensive experiences, which you can read about in my book, Symmetry, A True UFO Adventure, and actually working on a sequel, so that's fun. Got to get some more interviews done, Dolly, real soon, because I'm falling behind.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to say one thing real quick. I'm going to put my little note in here. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be in West Virginia, and I'm going to be doing a transition talk. And y'all can look on Preston's page for the info for it, and I'd like you to check it out. And I'm also going to be with Michelle DeRoche in a couple of days, and we're going to talk about just that. Okay.
Yeah, Michelle DeRoche, The Outer Realm, Wednesdays, Thursdays, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. We love Michelle.
Yes.
Okay, and yeah, Dolly's going to do a first-hand speaking engagement. I think this is going to be your first one where you're up there alone, because you've done some with me together, and we talked about your stuff.
Yep.
I'll be there. I'm going to support you. It's going to be fun. Okay, yeah. Well, let me just say hello to all you in chat before we start this show going, and I promise to be brief. I can't spend more than 4 or 5 minutes doing this because really this show is about our guest and you guys, of course, in chat, which is why I want to say hi to you all. It's because of you we do the show. So hello, Polly. Thank you for being first in line and joining us. And hello, Brian. Best part of Mondays. Awesome. We like to brighten up people's Mondays. And Scuba Maru, hope you're doing well. And the lovely Louise from New Jersey. Greetings, Earthlings and extraterrestrials. I'll add that in there because I don't know. Some of you might be ET. Ruth Kleiber, hello. She says hello to everyone in chat. And we have Peak here as well. And the truly wonderful, endlessly generous Namaste. We do this every week. I'm so humbled and honored and delighted and all the wonderful things. So thank you for your true, honest, wonderful generosity. It's just amazing. So thank you. Who else do we have here? Janie Mashburn. Full house. Very exciting. Yes. Lots of familiar names here in chat. Hi, Kaj. Hope you're doing well. And we have Scarlet Fire giving a little preview of what we're talking about tonight. UFOs over Maine. Yes. Maine, by the way, is the only state with one syllable. Piece of useless trivia there, but thought I'd throw it out. Maybe you'll get on Jeopardy and you'll know the answer and you can thank me later. Okay, who else do we have? Jessica. Hello, Jessica. And
I like that.
FYI, Massachusetts once had Maine as part of its statehood. Oh,
yes, it did.
Another piece of trivia. Did not know that. Okay, who else we have here? Central Wisconsin. And John Schaefer's. Very cool. White Dragon and Cliff Bullinger. And Sandra. Hello, Sandra. Hope you're doing well. We love you very much. Justin Sane. I love that name. Justin Sane. Thanks for joining us, Justin. And Tim. And we have Judith Littlewood. Can we have contact with ETS and not be aware of it? Well, I'll put a little star on that. And we will ask that question. Terrence Wills, late but made it. Hi from New York. CT guitar guy. I'm almost done, Dolly. I see I've still got 1 minute before it's 4 minutes doing this. Sherry, hello. And Michelle Wilfong, thank you for joining us. And João Batista da Silva. Thank you, João. I'm really appreciative of your wonderful comments on my YouTube channel. So thank you very much. And Lulu Bubble and Angie. And you know what? Let's get started because it's easy to say hi forever. Let me pull up our guest's bio, which I have right here. It's got an impressive bio. I'm really excited to talk to our guest tonight. His name is Nomar Slevik. He's an author, a researcher, an experiencer to some extent, a documentarian. He's got a podcast as well. We're going to be talking about his book, UFOs over Maine, and probably some other stuff, paranormal, ghosts, ETs, onboard encounters, I hope. But I'm very excited to have Nomar on the show. He's from Bangor, Maine. He is a ufologist and paranormal researcher and a member of the Paranormal Research in Maine, Prime Paranormal. He's an independent creator, researcher, writer, and investigator in numerous aspects of the paranormal, and he delights in sharing stories through different mediums such as books, documentaries, podcasts. He has shared his work with hundreds of thousands of enthusiasts and has maintained a steady output of material for over 20 years. He's been fascinated by all things paranormal since childhood, beginning, and I'm going to want to hear about this, Nomar, beginning with a UFO encounter at 4 years old. In his adult life, his passion has been to research, investigate, write, and share UFO and extraterrestrial encounters from everyday people in a way that conveys the human element of a profoundly strange encounters. It's a man after my own heart. Let me just quickly show you guys some of his books because he does have a few of them, and they're definitely worth checking out. UFOs over Maine, and this is the original edition, and this is the new edition. 10th anniversary. And he's also got Granite Skies, a disconcerting journey through the unknown. This is about more UFO stuff. Otherworldly encounters, evidence of UFO sightings and abductions. A novel as well. A strange trilogy, all kinds of stuff he's got. So pretty excited to have him on tonight. Does have his own podcast as well. So let's just bring him on. And we can get this show started. There he is. Hi, Nomar.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
And I knew about the Massachusetts thing, but I didn't realize that Maine was the only state with one syllable. That's interesting.
It's funny, right?
That's cool. And Octopus with No Friends. Shout out to them. They went to school in Maine, so that's cool.
Oh, cool.
You're kidding. Oh. Wow.
Friends in the house. There you go.
Very
good.
Just insane. How you doing, man? We love that name.
Oh, there's another question. I'm going to put a little stars on this. So yeah, thanks, Nomar, for joining us. I hope you're doing well tonight.
Yeah.
When I saw your book on Amazon, I'm like, ooh, someone who's actually covered a whole state. You know, I've done this with California and a few other states.
Sure.
I'm trying to get some other folks who've done books on states and got rejected by a couple. Like, I just don't do that. I'm like, oh, maybe Nomar will. And so I'm so happy you said yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been aware of your work, Preston, for quite some time. I believe I used Inside UFOs in my research for one of my books. So I think you got a sighting in one of my books, which is cool. So
Cool.
it's always cool to help out fellow authors, with our work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've interviewed a few people who've had some pretty exciting encounters in Maine, by the way.
Yeah, I think we know a mutual person named Juanita.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. She's wonderful. So that's cool that you've talked to her.
Oh, very cool. I did use a pseudonym for her in my book.
Well, I'm glad I didn't say your last name.
So I'm glad that you didn't use the last name. But, no one would know anyway.
Yeah.
It would be hard to figure out. I don't know. I guess if you're a really good researcher, it wouldn't be too hard. But okay, well, let's see. I always like to start the show as I warned you, because I don't like to blindside our guests ever, about asking how you got involved in this subject. And I know
Yeah.
in your bio you talked about having an encounter at a very young age,
Yeah.
which really raises my eyebrows, because that's usually when contactees start having their first experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if
Yeah.
this was a one-off or not, but either way, yeah, I'd love to
No.
hear about your encounter. What was it, age 4?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, well, 3 or 4, maybe even 5, but it's, I'm pretty sure it's 4. And shout out to Kamikaze too. I got a buddy that's from Farmington, and we actually just hung out today, so that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I was like 4 years old and living in Fort Kent, Maine, which is at the tip of Maine. And I literally lived right across the river from Canada. Like you could throw a rock and hit Canada. And
Wow.
we were so close. It was actually easier to get my haircuts in Canada when I was a kid, and customs was super easy back then. You just kind of drove through, showed an ID. Sometimes they'd look at your trunk, but I remember it being like 2 minutes. Anyway, but I had fallen asleep one night and something woke me up in the middle of the night, some sort of bang. And when I say middle of the night, I mean, I'm 4 years old. So I don't know if that's like 9 p.m. or like 3 a.m. I don't know. But something woke me up and my eyes are kind of like darting around for some sort of explanation. And I start hearing light taps at my window. And so my eyes go to the window and then the sky lights up. And I'm like, oh, it's a thunder and lightning storm. So that's cool. So I kneel up on my bed to like look out my window. And, I'm seeing the little, lightning streaks and things like that. And I'm hearing booms. And the St. John River was basically like below my window. And it's like kind of roaring, right? Like right below me. Like it seemed like it was pretty windy out or whatever. So rough river. And, just after a moment or so, there was this really disturbing lightning bolt. And like if I were to ask you to draw a lightning bolt, you would draw this jagged yellow line, or it's like the charging indicator on your smartphone. And it was stuck in a cloud. And even at 4 years old, I knew that you saw lightning just in a, split second, blink of an eye. But this was stuck in a cloud. And there was kind of like this halo around it. You know how you see the sun with a halo around it sometimes when it's, hazy, I guess. So there was like the halo thing going on, and there was electricity kind of coming off of the lightning bolt in the cloud, and there were still booms associated with it. And I don't really know what happened next. I just kind of remember waking up in the morning. I go to the bathroom, and I'm walking back from the bathroom to my bedroom, and I can see out my window as I'm walking down the hallway, and the lightning bolt's still there. So I'm like, what? So I go downstairs and I get my dad and I bring him all the way upstairs. I don't know why we just didn't go out the front door, or downstairs window, but I brought him all the way upstairs to look out my window, and it was gone. So I tried explaining to my dad that it was a lightning bolt and it got, stuck in a cloud, and there was all this thunder and lightning, and I must have been pretty animated because he kind of did the adult thing, like patted me on the head and be like, okay, buddy, but I must have been really animated because he had to like kneel down and get on my level and put his hands on my shoulders. And he's like, buddy, it didn't even rain last night. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I was like, okay, again, I'm 4 years old. So, I'm not processing everything. It didn't scare me. I wasn't like, oh, I saw a UFO. The next shiny thing caught my attention and I kind of forgot about it. A couple weeks later, I'm woken up again in the middle of the night. Again, I don't know if it's 9 p.m., 3 a.m., but it's my dad waking me up, and he brings me downstairs, and I can see that my mom is shoving my sister into like her winter clothes, and then she gets a hold of me and is putting me in my winter clothes, and my dad scoops me up and takes us outside. And this is winter in Fort Kent. I mean, it's hellish, it's snowing and cold. It's awful. And he takes me outside and I immediately bury my head in his chest. And I'm like, what are we doing? Because I'm still half asleep. And he's like, buddy, you got to look up. You got to look up. And so finally I take my head out of his chest and I look up and I'm seeing a kaleidoscope of colors, greens and reds and stuff. And I'm like, oh, it's the Northern Lights. That's what I saw. They had to explain that to me at the time, but I saw this weird lightning bolt, and then 2 weeks later, the Northern Lights, which is the only time I saw them. I didn't get to see them when it was crazy earlier this year. It was just always cloudy over here. It sucked. Anyway, yeah, but it's the only time I've seen it. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the lightning bolt like it was yesterday. That's how I remember it, a lightning bolt. So those two things happening so close to each other at such a young age, I think created some sort of core memory, a core memory of this strange, if you will. And I was like, weird stuff happens in the sky and I got to pay attention, so I just been looking up ever since. And as I got into my preteen years and early teen years, I was really getting
Uh-oh.
Can't hear you.
Sound. We lost you. Did you do something to your mic? How's that? Say something.
No, it's on. Now it's on mute.
It's on mute.
No sound.
Don't you just love when this stuff happens?
Technical difficulties, folks. Hold on a second.
We have the beginnings of a major CME hitting us right now. It started about an hour ago, and it's going to flub up a lot of stuff. So this doesn't surprise me.
All right, check.
Oh,
Yay!
there you go.
We are.
All
Okay.
All right, cool. Sorry about that.
Okay, so you said you were.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. What was I saying?
The last thing we remember you saying was you had become a teenager.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So as I was getting into my preteen and teen years, I was collecting a lot of ghost and UFO stories and Bigfoot and Bermuda Triangle, Loch Ness Monster, getting into all that stuff. And my mom got me into horror movies at like a super young age, probably inappropriately young, to get into them. And but all that stuff has stayed with me over the years, and it just kept snowballing into collecting stories. But that was really the catalyst back, way back, 40 plus years ago, and having that crazy encounter that I remember to this day. It's crazy.
Is that your earliest memory, would you say?
It is. Yeah. I believe it is.
I was curious because I've heard of, I've interviewed a lot of people, and a number of them have said, my earliest memory, and they explain their little UFO thing. Like, wow, that is interesting to me.
Have you ever thought about what that light in the sky might have been?
Well,
cognitive.
When I was getting into I think it was like, 16, 17, 18, I was thinking back and remembered that story because I was trying to cull some personal stories, mixing them into the other stories that I was collecting. I'm like, what's happened? What are some strange stuff that's happened? Because a lot of strange stuff has happened to me and my family throughout the years, paranormal stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I saw something crazy when I was like a toddler, and, as I started thinking about it and remembering it, it all came kind of rushing back. And it's really the crux of that story. Something wakes me up. It was a bang. I assumed it was thunder or something that woke me up. And, the story I just told, that's basically like what I remembered at that time, and just how it sat with me and hit me. And it kind of really confronted me that I know what I experienced. I know what I saw, regardless of belief of others or whatever at that moment. And it wasn't until, again, I was like, 16, 17, 18, when I was like, oh, it's real, and you can't change my mind because I saw it.
Can I give you some confirmation?
Sure.
Okay. It doesn't need to rain for a craft to charge in the clouds. If the cloud is polarized appropriately, the craft can fly into the cloud and it'll set the opposite charge toward it, and it'll create lightning, and that charges their batteries. And they have multiple batteries on these craft, and they'll sit there for hours doing that in the right situation. And up in the north in Canada, that's a really good place for them to do that, actually.
Oh, for sure.
So you were watching a real craft charge its batteries before it left.
That's wild. And
Yeah.
I wonder if I just watched it so long and being so young, maybe I was just bored and fell asleep, or if it's like, oh, little dude's watching us, let's put him to sleep, like,
I don't know.
I don't know.
If you're looking at something they're doing, they automatically can pick up on you no matter who you
Yeah.
are or where you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
It's like my thought to your thought. It'll
Yeah.
ding their bell and they'll go, oh, who is that? And they'll watch you back.
Well,
Yeah.
did you ever
And
have any later sightings?
yeah. I think I've actually kind of lost count now. That's 'cause I usually have a number, but I think I'm like 16, 17 UFOs I've seen. And when I say that, it doesn't mean extraterrestrial, but it's something I couldn't identify, but yeah. The next, like, really, like, this is not of this earth type of sighting that I had. First of all, I do want to say I'm pretty sure that was a screen memory with the lightning bolt stuff. Like, that's what I feel like, or it was my 4-year-old mind not knowing how to compute, compute that in my
Well,
head.
whatever
So
it was, it made an impression on you, and that alone is
yeah,
significant.
yeah, for sure. So the next big thing that happened was basically like 20 years later. I think I was like 24, and that wasn't the immediate next, but it was the next. Like, this is definitely otherworldly, and it's really interesting how it started, because it started with a skeptic. I was living with a roommate at the time, and they were a big time skeptic, and they were very considerate and understanding of my interest in the field and everything, but they just didn't believe in any of it or anything. And I was already home from work, so this was evening, and I heard them come home from work, and I heard the front door slam, and then I heard them like running up the stairs, and I was like in this little studio room that I had. I was working on the computer, and I hear them running up the stairs. I'm like, why are they making so much noise? What's happening? And then my door swings open. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? They're like, there's a UFO outside right now, and it was following me home, and now it's hovering over the house across the street. I'm like, what? And this is, I'm like, that's crazy. So I run downstairs and I go outside, and this was, God, I was 24. Yeah, so it was like 20 years ago, 22 years ago.
What year exactly do you think?
So I guess it was like 2002.
Okay.
And I had a Nokia phone, one of those brick phones.
Right, a flip phone. Yeah.
Not even a flip. It was just like a brick.
One little thing.
Little tiny, yeah.
Terrible.
And so I get outside, and we're up on a hill, and us being up on a hill, we're probably level with the roof of the house across the street, but it's like a football field length away. And above the house, 300 feet, is this red light with 2 white lights on either side, but a red light in the middle and 2 white lights on the side. And it was kind of like in the shape of a boomerang or something like that. And it's just hovering silently above the house. And I'm just very human in that moment. And I'm just in awe. And I'm staring at it like an idiot. And then I'm like, oh, I have a phone in my pocket. So I pull out the Nokia and I take a picture of it. And I look at it, and it's just this red squiggle on a black screen. It's nothing. You know what I mean? Awful fun. So I'm like, okay. And so I don't know what else to do. So I just keep watching it. A moment later, it's not very much longer later, it starts to move up and diagonally. And it probably moved up and diagonally, maybe another 100 feet, something like that. And then it stopped again briefly. And then it started doing a level trajectory down the road. And it kind of looked like it was running parallel with the road. So I was like, oh my God, I got to go follow it. So I fish my keys out of my pocket. I run to the car, and my car is parked facing the house. So I immediately lose sight of it, because now I'm facing the house away from where the UFO was. And I'm backing down my driveway, and it's kind of a long driveway. Then I got to go down the road a little bit, and then finally get on the road that it's going down. And I lose it. I don't see it anywhere. I'm like, oh no. So I fly down the road, and I think it's about a mile or two, and there's this bed and breakfast. I can never remember the name of it, but there's a bed and breakfast down the road on the right hand side, and there's this huge field next to it. So I'm like, I'll pull into the field. It's got an unencumbered view of the sky, and I'll just sit there and wait for it. So I get there. It takes me like 2 seconds to get there, because I'm speeding. I park, I get out, and my head's on a swivel looking for this thing, and it's gone. It never shows up again. So I don't know what it was, but we don't have things that hover like that. We just don't.
Yeah, you do. In 2002, that was a police drone. They had them in 2002, so? And that is the light configuration of them. That was a police drone. Your friend was being followed for a reason. He must have done something wrong, and they followed him for it, and they're waiting for him to come out. Yep.
That's wild.
Yeah, that is absolutely a police drone. I can show you pictures of them.
Yeah,
They're very
yeah,
powerful in 2002, and they're very advanced.
Dolly has a
Wow.
military background, by the way, so she
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
got a lot of
wild.
experience in these
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah,
That
but it's
you
fun to
just
follow them too. I mean, because it's like, what are you looking at? You'll see drones, police drones sometimes show up for UFO, just so you know.
Well, was it
Uh,
making any noise that you could hear?
nothing, no.
Yeah,
But it
they
might
don't
have
make
been
Yeah,
too far away too, you know.
yeah. They
Because it
move,
was
but you're describing the pattern that they use to fly and everything. I mean, that's a definite police drone.
yeah, it was
Have
very
these
deliberate
unbelievable
and chill.
cameras on them. Yeah, and they got
Yeah.
zoom, like they can see your face from about 300
Was,
feet
Yeah.
up.
was it making any maneuvers that were absolutely,
No.
outlandish?
No,
All right.
no. It was pretty
Yeah.
chill.
But that's
it was
pretty
a
cool.
pretty chill stuff. Yeah, yeah. That's definitely cool. Like even that is almost or just as fascinating, especially
Right.
for 2002, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
because
think
it
everybody should
looked
be
huge.
interested in the technology that they're seeing in the skies, because the governments are way more advanced than you realize, and a lot of people will attribute ET stuff to exactly that. And it's like, you got to know what's going on with it, and people
Especially these
investigate
days.
it, and it's
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
to
yeah.
yeah.
But this is cool though. The next time I tell this story, I can be like, and Dolly told me
I'll send you a picture of one.
it was yeah, please do.
In the years and everything. They like every 3 or 4 years they reconfigure them, trying to mess with people. But that's definitely a police drone, and he was
That's
probably
wild.
being followed for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
Okay. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
That's pretty interesting. Any other ones that you would point to towards being possibly ET or just odd?
Yep. So I was in the Bangor area, and I had a job at the time. I was an auto parts delivery driver, but I delivered to like garages. So we're kind of like a wholesale company that sold parts to garages. And I had this route that I would take, and I lived in Portland at the time, and I would do this really long, like day-long route all the way up to Bangor and back. So it was like 50 stops. It took you 8-9 hours to do. So I'm up in the Bangor area, and I'm like halfway through my shift, and I'm parked, and I get out of my van and I just get out and look up, like for no particular reason, and I'm like, whoa. And there was a silver ball hovering in the sky right above Penobscot Bay. And if I stuck my hand out with my thumb would cover the ball. But it was just beautifully silver and round and gorgeous and not moving whatsoever. It just hung in the sky, and it was so friggin' weird. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm walking to the other side of my van as I'm watching this thing. And then I stop on the other side of the van, and I'm continuing to watch it. And then I just realized it's not there anymore. It was there and then it wasn't. And I didn't see it dissipate or dissolve or fade out or shoot up or anything. It was just there and then it wasn't. And I was just staring at a blue sky. And I was like, what the hell did I just see? The whole thing lasted.
You really saw an ET
10
drone
seconds.
that way. That's a drone.
Yeah.
That's an ET drone, and the way they get out of your eyesight is they go straight up at Mach 5.
Wow.
You'll never see it leave. But yeah, if it's perfectly smooth, metallic, and very shiny, that's an ET drone.
Wow.
So you were being watched.
How big would that be, you think?
It's about 10 feet in circumference. They're majorly pretty big. I mean, if it came down in front of you, you'd go, hey,
Whoa. Yeah.
And there are AI grays in them. They pilot them. So sometimes they're perfectly round, and then sometimes they're kind of egg-shaped. But that's an ET drone.
Yeah. And this one was perfectly round and silver, and Justin saw one too, or two of them. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in awe of just like how round and tight and like silver it was. And
absolutely perfect. Yeah.
like on the upper, I think it was the upper right hand side, it was like that's where the sun was hitting it. So it was like, super white, like just in that little area because the sun was reflecting it. But I think the next thing, that was probably 09-ish when I saw that one.
Well, one more question quick on that. And
Sure.
On the off chance, did you get any feeling that it was watching you, or any communication or anything odd
nothing.
around that time?
No, no. I just thought it was weird that I stepped out and went like that and just immediately looked at it.
It caught your eye, yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Well, that could be something.
it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe.
Kind of
maybe.
call to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe so. Because again, like since 4 years old, I've trained myself to look up. Like I had a long drive today, and I was just constantly looking up. And I love it when it's cloudy because I love it when I know it's not celestial or whatever. Like it's under the clouds. And unfortunately, I didn't see anything today. But anyway, the another cool one that happened, and this was much more recent. When the hell was this? 2018, I think. And I was in the southern Maine area, so this was lower than Augusta, but higher in the state than like New Hampshire or whatever. Like I'm a little bit higher, and it's this small little town called Naples, and it's got this beautiful lake. It's gorgeous, and I'm literally up on this small mountain that you can actually drive up. It's called Hackers Hill. And I was up there because you can see all the different mountain peaks around. And I was up there because I interviewed a gentleman like the week prior, maybe 2 weeks prior. And he claimed to have seen UFOs and fighter jets chasing them. And this UFO would go behind this mountain peak, and it was almost like a curtain. It would disappear. And like it went into the mountain. I'm like, that's wild. I haven't heard of that. And you could see this mountain peak from Hackers Hill. And I wanted to set up a watching station for the night to watch this mountain to see if I could see anything come in or out of it, So, and I always like to tell the cops what I'm doing. I had some trouble when I was younger when I didn't tell the cops what I was doing. So I always tell the cops what I'm doing. So I let them know. I actually had to get permission to get up there because it's gated and they close it at night. I'm like, I would love to sit up there at night and here's what I'm doing. And I told them the story, and the cops were like, "That's freaking cool. Yeah, you can go up there." Well, I'm like, but just, please don't shut the gate, because like I might want to leave. Yeah. I might need to leave quickly at 3 a.m. So I just heard a crazy noise in my room.
By the way, some people in chat said they saw your curtain move.
Yeah. I got the window open. I think that's
okay.
All but that was why. Okay. Anyway, so it's I get up there early, so it's like 7 p.m. or something like that, and I bring like I get takeout from somewhere, and I bring it up there with me. And I was a smoker at the time. I haven't smoked in like 5 years now, so I'm so glad that I quit. Yeah, thank you. But so I was eating and I had some smokes. I'm waiting for it to get nice and dark and everything, so I can really see a light as opposed to maybe something in the daytime sky, which might be harder to see. I was hoping for nighttime so I could see a light, like fly and disappear and whatever. And so in front of me are like 3 different mountain peaks, and it also looks down into this valley, and I can see neighborhoods and stuff. But then behind me is the lake, and it's beautiful. It's super calm night. It's a summer night, really nice and calm. And it's like 11 p.m. now. Nothing's happening. I'm bored as hell. I'm the only one up there, because people are just used to not going up there at night because they close the gate like at 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. So I'm just up there by myself, and I'm getting out and like kind of leaning in front of the car and having a smoke, and then I'll get back in the car, listening to the radio, and I'm looking around, and it gets to be about 1 a.m. I'm like, boy, oh boy, this is tough going. But that's how it is when you're doing research and investigating and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try some UFO summoning. What the hell? Let's try it out. So I get out of the car, and, I'm not, I have thoughts on Greer. So I kind of do my own thing, and I sit in front of the car, and I start thinking in my head like a mantra. And I keep repeating it in my head, and my eyes are closed, and I keep repeating it, and I keep repeating it. And I open my eyes, and there's nothing. I'm like, okay, I'm an idiot. This is foolish. I shouldn't have come. This is ridiculous. So I step out from my car because I was leaning on it, and I go to walk around the car to get back inside. And as I do that, over the lake is a hovering light. I'm like, well, that's not the moon, and it's not moving. So it's not a plane. And it's above the lake. It's like feet above the lake. You know what I mean? Like, it was still high. It was probably like 200 feet above the lake, but measurable. This isn't celestial. This is down here. And I'm watching it. So I get in the car and I have cameras, and I have a night vision camera and I have a full spectrum camera with me. So I get in the car and I grab those and I start recording the light. And then just as I'm recording it, I see these headlights come up the road. I'm like, whoa, what the hell is this? And so like I put my cameras down really quick. And I'm like, is that the cops? Who is this? I finally realized because they don't park right next to me. They park like a little ways away, and I can start to smell something, and I'm hearing laughing and stuff. So I think some kids came up, to smoke and do their thing. And I'm like, okay, they saw the gate and they're taking advantage of it. So I'm like, all right, forget about them. Let me go back and start recording this light again. And it's gone. Again, all of that happened within like 30 seconds. You know what I mean? But I feel like the world's worst UFO investigator. I felt it, but I did manage to capture like 20 or 30 seconds of this light, and it's on my YouTube channel, and it's called Hackers Hill UFO. And, to the skeptic or whatever, you're going to see it, watch it, and it's just a light in the sky. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, it's no big deal. But knowing the story that got me there, doing the UFO summoning, and then catching that thing and it's not moving, that was an honest to goodness unidentified flying object. Again, I don't know if it was extraterrestrial, but it was something that didn't seem like it should be there.
That's cool. That's a CE5. That's
Yeah.
UFOs.
Yeah.
And for all you guys who are watching, the links to Nomar's YouTube channel are in the show notes, and also I'm running them down here on the banner. So if you want to check that out, not now, after the show, please.
And, Fun Talks TV asked a question. If I was summoning a UFO form or something or someone, what I was actually repeating in my head was, it's okay to show yourself to me. I'm willing to accept you. It's okay to show yourself to me. I'm willing to accept you. I mean, I don't know what the hell to say. So that's just what I came up with at the time. And I just literally kept repeating it. I must have said it 30, 40, 50 times or whatever.
You actually picked a good thing to say. That would have definitely given them the veer to come down and check you out.
Yeah. I was trying to be kind and welcoming.
Yeah, ET are leery of people with guns, and it's not because they're afraid of the guns. It's what's going to happen if you shoot at a craft. It's not going to hurt them. It's going to come back at you. It'll ricochet back at you with force.
Yeah. I actually have a story about that. I can tell you guys later. It's not my story, but I can tell you about somebody that shot at one in Maine. It's crazy.
All right. Well, yeah, let's hear it.
Sure. So it's a gentleman named John King, and this happened in Bangor, and to this day, even after contacting Stephen King's team, I don't know if they're related, but it's interesting that they have the same name and they live in the same town. But this gentleman named John King, he was driving in this area of Bangor. It's Mount Hope Avenue. And in this particular area at the time, it was near Bangor Memorial Hospital, which is not there anymore, but it was near there, and there was a swampy area. It's all built up now, so it looks a lot different today. But at that time, he's driving and he sees this silver thing really kind of low in the sky. And it's off and over the swamp. So it's off the road and over a swamp. But he sees it and it's just hovering. He's like, what the hell is that? So he kind of hits the brakes. And this is Bangor in 66. There ain't nobody else on the road, at night. So he just stops his car in the middle of the road and he gets out and he's looking at this thing. And as he gets out and he's looking at it, it almost immediately comes down to street level. So now it's right over the swamp, and he can see that it's touching the vegetation of the swamp. It's so low, and he's getting freaked out, and he can feel like it's looking at him. And he said it's about as big as a car, and it's oval. And it's completely silver, kind of like what you were talking about, Dolly, earlier. They're oval, and this one was oval. And he can almost feel like it's looking at him. And then it starts to slowly start to come towards him.
Yep.
So he freaks out. He gets in the car. In his glove box is a pistol. It's just a 22. Pulls it out. And he gets down in the corner, by the headlight of the car, and he kind of puts his hand steady. and he aims and he fires right at the UFO, and he hears the ding go right off of it. Now the UFO starts to wobble side to side, but it's still moving towards him. So he fires another shot. Ding. And it's still coming towards him. So he's like, oh my God. So he stands up and he fires at it. And there's some speculation in the story whether he did 3 shots or 4 shots. The research that I did, the further research, I found that it's only 3 shots. So anyways, he shoots at it this 3rd time. It dings off again, pings off, and the UFO apparently shoots straight up in the air, and it's out of sight in a second. So he's freaked out. He gets in the car and immediately drives to the cop shop. And he's like, here's what happened. And I discharged my pistol. And the cops are like, this old timer's freaked out. Like, we believe him. Yeah. Let's let's come show us where this happened and what happened. And he's like, okay. And he was scared to go out there, but he's got the cops following him. So they get there, and it had recently rained. And so the road's kind of wet now, but the cops can see that the vegetation in the swamp area, because that's where he was telling them, like, where it started, that it was singed. The top of the vegetation in the swamp was singed. And the cops were like, well, this is crazy. Like, we believe you, but there's nothing further to investigate because there's nothing else here. We have what you happened, and that's crazy. But they wrote up a report and everything, and but it's one of the few instances where you hear of somebody shooting at a UFO. Crazy.
Yeah. I did a whole little article in one of my books. Don't shoot. It doesn't end well usually.
Yeah. And I feel like this guy was lucky. You know what I mean? Like, I think the UFO was just like, this guy's crazy. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, in the book Symmetry, Dolly recounted an incident to me where a guy shot at a UFO. It pinged back and hit him in the leg. They had to pull him on board and heal him. Big deal.
Oh my goodness.
We came within about 300 feet of him, and we were just hovering for a minute, and he literally, I didn't see it. He just somehow had a gun, and blam, and it happened so fast, and he went boom, straight to the ground when it hit him back. And he was screaming, and what are you going to do? You can't let him bleed to death. So we went and got him and brought him in, and they had to fix them before we let him go. And it was like, all I can tell you is that I knew that would happen, but I didn't realize the veracity of how people are dumb enough to shoot at an object like that. I mean, most people handle gun. No, you don't shoot at metal things. It'll ricochet. Okay. Right. You especially don't shoot at a UFO. And everybody listen to this. There's a field, and it'll generate back at you with force. What you hit at it, it'll send it back with power. And it hurt him. It went right through his leg all the way through. And it's like, oh my God.
There was a case in the Vietnam War. I cannot, verify it, of course, but apparently someone shot a missile at a UFO. It came right back at them.
Oh my goodness.
So, I don't know.
I mean, everything says that this John King fella was quite lucky then.
Yeah, he was, because he must have flinched when he shot it, and it went off in a different direction, because this guy that night was in deadly aim of us. He was going to get us, and oh my God,
the way he was telling the story, because he recounted it for like the paper, that he was just scared out of his mind. So I don't think he was holding that pistol very tightly, or was. I don't know, even though if he was aiming well.
Shoot first, ask questions later. That's
very different.
I heard another case. I think this was Arizona or thereabouts, real quick, where a man and a wife ran out to shoot at a UFO, had missing time, woke up the next morning, went out, and there was the rifle all dismantled on the table.
Oh, wow.
So another guy in Italy, he ran out. The ETs were trying to take his rabbits. So he pulls out his rifle, and suddenly it becomes so heavy, he can't hold it up.
That's interesting.
So, I looked into a bunch of cases like that. So I haven't heard that one. That's a good one. I like that it's got a little denouement there, a little end note with the police.
Yeah. That's always great when there's, some sort of documentation like that.
True.
An authority figure.
Yep.
Right.
So have you had personally more experience? Have you been on board a craft? Have you dreamt of anything?
Not that I'm aware of. I feel like I've only ever had visual sightings, unless something happened at 4 years old, because I just don't remember anything from seeing it and then waking up. Yeah.
The age to me is suspect because that's
Oh, it is.
always
It
what
definitely
happens.
is.
I mean, you know this.
Yeah.
If you've written about UFOs, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I have all the markings of an experiencer. You know, my dad had this strange experience, and it was right around the same time. My dad's a massive skeptic, but you know, God bless him for
My dad too.
supporting me
The
the
day he
way he
died, my
has.
dad was like, no, no, no.
Well,
Roswell's
my
a good
dad
one.
my dad's seen a few strange things. I'll tell you some things he's seen. It's really weird. But one thing that he saw that was right around that time frame, it might have been a year later, it could have been the same year, I don't know. But he, to this day, he doesn't know if it was a dream or not, but he was in a dreamlike state. And he says he wakes up and the cat is at the side of the bed, and he wakes up and he's looking at it, and then he sits up, and he can tell that the cat wants him to follow it. So he stands up and the cat starts walking, and he starts following the cat. And every once in a while, the cat's turning around to make sure, my dad's still following him. And then the cat takes him all the way downstairs and then takes him to the cellar door. And my dad's like, you want me to open the door, And my dad also said that during this time, like his breathing and everything sounded really weird. Like he was in a vacuum of sound, like it was just very muffled or,
The Oz effect.
Yeah. So he's like, okay. And like my mother was like, do not let the cats down in the cellar because we'll lose them. There's so many places where it can, they can get out and all that stuff. They were indoor cats. But my dad's in this dreamlike state, and he's like, well, the cat wants me to open the door, so that's what I'm going to do. So he opens the cellar door. Now the cat's gone. Like he didn't see it run down the stairs. It's just gone. But he knows he's supposed to go down cellar. So now he's down cellar, and there was an old wood stove down there, and it was a dirt floor cellar. This was like in the 80s, and just an ugly cellar. Lots of cobwebs and creepy crawlies, but the wood stove was there, and behind the wood stove was these two stone walls, so this wood stove is kind of like in between these stone walls, but behind the stone walls there was just enough room to store like storm windows for the winter, so it was just a little bit of space on either side. You could store like 4 windows each back there, and that's where he had them stored. And he's down there and he's looking at the wood stove like he knows he's supposed to be looking in this area. And a second later, he sees this 6-foot tall thing peek out from around the stone wall where the storm windows are. And it's green. It's 6 foot tall and it's green. He doesn't know. He can't remember any other facial features. He just remembers it was so weird because it was bald and it was green and it was like 6 foot tall. And it peeks out at my dad and goes back. Peeks out at my dad and goes back. This freaks my dad out. So he decides to go back upstairs and get back in bed. My mom never woke up from what he said. And he lays back down and he wakes up, the next morning. And, but he didn't tell me this till I was probably in my teens when I was like really researching this stuff. He's like, this weird thing happened to me one time. And, so I thought that was interesting. Maybe it's connected. Maybe that was, who's what's he coming to, check on me or check on us, because it can be familial. So,
yeah. Well, cats can hear ET. They can talk to them psychically. And it sounds like you had a tall gray. They look green in the dark. It just depends on what color is going on. Yeah, they have a funny green color.
And he never mentioned turning on the cellar light. So I assumed he was down there in the dark.
Yeah, it was all glowing in there. You look green. But they can tell animals to bring you.
Certainly doesn't sound like your average weird dream or something. It's got
I know. He was
just,
but he's such a friggin' skeptic that be like, well, that happened. I don't believe in it, but it happened. It's so silly.
So how did it all roll out to you starting to write about? Was UFOs over Maine your first book?
It was, yeah. Well, actually, technically, no. I can be a little bit avant-garde, like in my creative process or creative endeavors. And the first book I ever wrote was very, there's like poetry and lyrics and like little stories and, and stuff like that. It was a strange thing that I never actually published, but I did show it to a bunch of people. But yeah, that was my first published work. And that was a bit of a nightmare to try to get it published at first because I went the traditional publisher route, and I had, all these stories that I had been saving since a teenager. And now I'm in my, later 20s. I think I'm getting into my 30s. and have all these stories. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my bookshelf. And yeah, I'm a book like collector. Like I'll never read. I'll never have enough time to read everything that I have. I'm one of those people. And I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, Maine ghost book, Maine ghost book, Maine ghost book. That's all that we freaking have here, like 10, 20 years ago. And I love them, don't get me wrong. But like, man, there's no story, there's no book dedicated to UFOs that have occurred in Maine, and I had the dumb idea that I was going to write that book. And, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I've been producing music and putting out albums for, 30 plus years now, but it's a different beast when you start working on a book, at least it was for me. Yep. So I pulled out this folder of all these stories that I have, and I'm like, well, let's pick one and let me start writing about it, because newspaper clippings and stuff, you just get the crux of what the story is. Somebody went out at night and you saw a light in the sky, and that, that's what I'm getting in the police beat or whatever. All right, they got the dude's name in here. Can I find him, contact him without the internet, mind you, for some of these? Like, how do I find this old timer now, and see if he'll share this story? And, so that was a lot of hit and miss type of stuff. And, so it got to the point where I was able to kind of round out some of these stories. It's almost like a novelization of some of these stories. Nothing's made up, but I want it to be interesting to read. Growing up, my school had like 4 UFO books. And I took them out all the time, but they were like, it was a slog to get through. They were like textbooks, you know what I mean? And I would just find the little nuggets of stories in there, and I'd be like, oh, that's so fascinating. Like the actual thing, like what the witness said or what the witness, when they quote them. But all this pontification around it, I was either too young for it or something, and it didn't speak to me. But the little minutia of the witness spoke to me. And I'm like, how can I translate that to a reader so it's interesting to read? And I wanted it to read like you're reading a fiction book, so I talk about the town, I talk about the town's people, I talk about what kind of person they are, what kind of family they have, and we get to the week of, or the month of, the week of, the day of the encounter, and then kind of the aftermath of it. So it's just this hopefully well-rounded story. And I also feel like I write like I talk. So I think it's just really easy to read, and it's, fast to read.
I love that style. It's accessible. It's a narrative style. It's much more than dry reporting.
Yeah. And
like I said, it's a human experience.
Yeah.
You want to get to that part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate that. Oh,
wow. That's cool.
Heidi, oh my gosh.
Okay. And Fred Fredericks, I for real, like I'm the same on that.
Mainstream books.
Yeah.
So well, I mean, you had trouble I had the devil of a time trying to get my first UFO books published, going the traditional route, which I finally, my most successful book, traditional publishing, UFOs Over Japan, I sent it out 49 times before I found someone.
Yeah. I think I was 20 plus sending it out to people. And it was a lot of no's, probably 10, 11, 12, 15 no's. I mean, you get 2 or 3 or a handful and it feels like it's a million of them, but then almost what's worse is when you don't hear back, and I'm like, so it's just in the ether. And, you get, for me anyways, I get worried like, oh, is somebody going to steal the story? And just, but that never happened, and I don't think it was good enough to steal anyways. But after sending it out and having the rejections, so over a year goes by, as I'm doing this. So I'm like, you know what, there's got to be a way that I could put the book out myself. And so I start doing some research. I get on the Googles or whatever the hell it was at the time, and I'm researching like how to put out a book myself. And before it was owned by Amazon, there was something called Create Space.
Oh,
and Create Space is KDP now, but it was Create Space, and you could do ebooks, and I don't even know if it was called Kindle then, but whatever the first iteration before Kindle, maybe it was Kindle, I don't know. And you could also do print publishing through them as well. And you submit your book. I'm not sure if you've done it, Preston, but submitting your book on Amazon and all that stuff. It's just you're kind of putting the book together yourself. You upload the Word doc file, and you either have a pre-made cover or you use their software to make one. And so I did all that, and then I ordered a proof copy. And the day that my proof copy came in, my roommate called me, said, "Hey, your book came in." I was like, "Oh wow, I gotta get home and check this out." So I went home at lunch from work to go get the book. While I'm driving home, I get an email from Schiffer Publishing. I'm like, "What's this?" Oh, it's probably another rejection, So I didn't read it till I got home. I'm walking in the door. I cross this threshold, and I'm walking and reading my phone, and they're like, we would like to put out your book, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, "What?" And then I see the package sitting there of the book. The book's done. But now I got these people that are like, "Yo, we want to put your book out." So now I'm like, okay. So I rip open the package.
Wow.
Now I'm holding the book. It's tangible, and it's so easy just to be like, go live or whatever the hell it is, to get your book published. And it was god awful. I would have had to do some editing, to the book. Like when I'm looking at the proof, I still have it. It's awful. But like it was double space. You ever see a book double space? It's just what? This isn't how books look. Anyway, but I'm holding something tangible, and I can get it on the shelves quickly, or I can go with this traditional publisher. I had to choose the traditional publisher. I had to see what that was like, So I told them that I was interested, and they sent over a contract. It was literally this thick, just a small regional publisher, and they send over a book-sized contract, and I half read it, even less understand a lot of it. And I'm just like, "Yep, sign it," and I sign it because that's cool, and it'll be available regionally at the Walmarts or wherever, you know what I mean, which is really cool. Well, so, what they don't tell you is how long that process is. So even though the book was done, in my opinion, it was still like a little over a year before Schiffer was going to put it out. And so they gave me a publicist and an editor and all that stuff. And, it was like a 6-month process to kind of get the book in publishing shape. And I learned so much, and it was amazing. And those people are really amazing at working with a green author. And, so it was a really eye-opening, positive experience. The money was god awful, but I didn't care. You could walk into a Walmart and see my book, locally, not, you couldn't go to California Walmart and see my book, but locally, you could walk into a Walmart and buy the book and stuff. And I just thought that was really cool. And so they were my first publisher. And it was a great experience, but a year goes by and I'm working on a second book, and they have first right of refusal for like my next 2 books or whatever. And
wait, before you go on, I need to take a
Sure.
quick station ID break because we now are at the top of the hour or thereabouts. So I want to let you all know that you are watching The Lightgate. I think this is episode 66. I'm your host, Preston Dennett. My co-host is Dolly Safran. Our guest tonight is Nomar Slevik, author of UFOs over Maine and a number of other books as well. We've talked about some of his own encounters, a couple that he investigated, and his journey to publication, which I found really interesting. Nomar, I want to mention a little bit about that because we use the same publisher.
Oh, cool.
But before I do, I want to let you all know that we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 107.7 FM, both in New Orleans, also on YouTube and Facebook. And if you have Roku, we are also on Roku. The show will be archived for you guys who may have joined late or weren't able to watch live. The show is definitely archived, and we've still got a lot more to talk about. We really not even dived at all into your book, Nomar. So we definitely need to do that. And if you guys have put any questions out there, I've started a few. I don't see many. So get them in there if you want to get them answered. But yeah, Nomar, that's so interesting because I had the same experience with Schiffer. They put really nice people, very professional. They put together a beautiful book. Not a whole lot of royalties there. But that wasn't what it was about. It was about getting the word out and
right.
Holding the book. They sent me a little bottle of wine from the
Yeah, me too. Like Stargazer or something. It
Yeah.
was really cool.
which was really nice.
Yeah.
I enjoyed working with Dinah Roseberry. I think she was the editor.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
worked with.
Dinah's amazing.
Yeah. It's funny. A psychic told me, you're going to be working with someone named Dinah. I'm like,
That's
no, I'm
wild.
not. There's nobody's named Dinah these days.
Yeah, Dinah. You know, like that's like, wow.
And sure
Dinah-
enough, it
Yeah.
showed up. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to tell this lady, but she was right, because
That's awesome.
that was
Yeah,
just wild.
Dinah's great. Dinah was really
Yeah.
she was so
yeah, she
patient with
published
such
my
an idiot.
UFOs. So that's, I mean, geez, the same day. What are the chances?
I know. It was so synchronistic or meant to be, or I don't know. Like I have a dumb human pea brain, so I don't know what the the gods were telling me or whatever, but something happened. And I'm like, I got to go with this. And it was great. It was a great experience. And it's so awesome to have a traditional publishing experience. And then they weren't interested in my next book. So I'm like, okay, like, do you even care? But because I had to present 2 of them before they'd let me out of my contract. And they're like, no, you can go do your thing. I'm like, wow, okay.
Wow.
So the whole process started over again. I had a second manuscript, and it was basically UFOs over Maine Part 2. It was basically what it was, just because there's so many stories, And my book with Schiffer kind of was like a UFOs in Maine for beginners type of book. And, I had submitted a much bigger manuscript, and it got kind of cut down, which is fine, whatever, it's their company. And I agreed to it by signing. So it's not like I was mad, but I was able to take some of those stories, and then I had a bunch of other ones that didn't make it into the book, and then was finding even more and talking to witnesses and interviewing more. And 4 years had gone by during this whole process, so I was becoming better at writing and researching and blah blah blah. So I had this new 300 plus page manuscript, and they weren't interested because it was more of the same stuff. And I think Dinah even told me, she's like, the UFO books aren't doing good right now, or that's what they say to authors to lessen the blow, which is fine. That's okay. So they were really cool to let me out of the contract so I could submit my manuscript to other publishers or whatever the hell I wanted to do with it. So I started the process again, and rejection. And then a little bit of a bigger company, Llewellyn Worldwide Publishing, decided to take a chance on me. And they were my second traditional publisher. And then that was another whole, second team of amazing people, and the publicist, and the places this publicist got me. Like, I was on Sirius Radio talking to like some heroes of mine, which was pretty crazy.
Wow.
And when they heard that a UFO guy was coming on, because they have producers that just book guests for them, then they're like, who do we have today? And so I got to talk to some like really cool people. I was on this hip hop show, and I got to talk to this guy named Rude Jude, and he was just like this hip hop kind of legendary sort of thing. And he kind of thought I was an old fuddy-duddy type of guy, because it was like UFO research type of guy he was having on. And then I come on, I'm like, Rude Jude, what's up, man? This is crazy. Big fan. He's like, whoa, all right, we got somebody cool here. So that led to my segment. Instead of being like 10 minutes in like a 3 or 4 hour show, he like kept me on for quite a while, which was cool, just because he liked me. So it was really cool, the places that the publicist got me that I wouldn't have gotten on my own. And the publicist kept CCing me on all the emails. So now that I'm no longer with Llewellyn, I still have all the contacts, because I was CC'd on everything. So when I started going on my self-publishing route, I would just email, all these people and be like, yo, I got a new book out. Can I come back on the show? And, a lot of them were like, yeah, sure.
Perfect.
And they were just dealing with me directly.
This is so cool, because Llewellyn was the one who accepted my book UFOs over Topanga after 49 people rejected it.
Wow, awesome.
And I loved them. I mean, they were
so cool.
Publicized, actually got a little bit of royalties too.
Yeah,
which was nice.
The check was a lot better. It still took a while.
But
No. But it still takes forever to get it, but it was a lot bigger, and that felt better, So that was nice.
Wow,
but self-publishing, for me, self-publishing is where it's at. The royalties are huge because I'm splitting them with nobody, except for I gotta pay to manufacture my own books, and that kind of sucks. And I would prefer to not always use Amazon. Like, we have wonderful local bookmakers, and I would love to use them as much as possible. Unfortunately, it's pretty expensive, especially these days. So with my latest book, it was really tough to do that, but it was cool to use local publishers in the past, and not publishers, but bookmakers, book manufacturers locally. And so that's why I try to do if I can, if it makes financial sense, but I can't pay $20 per book myself for author copies, and then I'm not going to charge $45 for a book. I'd want it to be like $25, maybe $30. This latest book is, 465 pages. I think $25 is reasonable, to charge for it, but I can't pay 20 to have it manufactured, and live off of that. So this is what I do for a living now. And, I've got to make sound financial decisions. So sometimes I have to, bend at the overlords to try to save a little bit of money. So.
I do recommend people who are beginning, go to traditional publishing route, because you learn so much.
So much.
And it's
I'm so glad I did it. I'm a much better writer, working with the editors, and also learning that you don't have to be a writer and an editor and a blah and a day and a just be a writer, write your stuff, get it all out. And then you can go to Fiverr and pay somebody $20 to edit your book, and sometimes you get what you pay for. So, if you can spend a little bit more, spend it, but just get it out, get all the words out. Don't worry about the grammar and the punctuation and all that stuff. Get an editor, and hopefully you got some homies that'll read it for free, and we'll get a lot of the stuff, first, and then you can send it to a pro. You can even use, Grammarly, one of those things. And I'm sure AI is incorporated into all that.
I got in a little bit of argument with my Llewellyn editor because he cut out a big chunk of my first chapter. Turned out he was absolutely right. I was being a diva.
No, but that's tough.
Yeah.
And it's humbling. Yeah, it's humbling. And to now take that knowledge to a self-published book and be like, it's okay to let go of that. It's okay. And I got to know why too. And it's not adding to it. Yeah, it's adding word count, and that's great, but it's not adding to the overall story, or it's not adding to the overall book. So it's okay to let go of stuff,
Sorry, I'm talking all about publishing. I'm just interesting. So tell us about the book itself, some of the stories, and
sure.
465 pages. That's
big. Yeah, it's a big boy, and it's kind of like it's the book that I originally wanted to write. It's the tome, and it's still not everything.
No, never will be.
Yeah, what's crazy is that I'm still finding new to me stories that are so outlandish that I should have found them 10 years ago, 16 years ago, when I was first writing this stuff. How I didn't come across them, I don't friggin' know. But, you learn and grow, and, I'm maturing as a researcher. So you just get better at it, the more you do it. As an example, just 2 years ago, so this is 2 years before this new book came out, I gave myself 2 years to completely rewrite the book. I reread the original UFOs over Maine. Super cringe. I don't know if anybody here will look over something you did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's awful. You don't like your own stuff anyways, but to look back at something 10, 15 years ago, you're like, ugh. So I wasn't just going to republish that, but I did know that I wanted to do something on the 10-year anniversary. So I reread it. I'm like, oh, it's awful. So I completely dismantled it, rewrote everything, re-interviewed a ton of people, and added about 150 more stories, and just built this thing from the bottom up again. And one story that I found 2 years ago happened in 1965. And it was in this really small town called Fairfield, Maine. And it's just about an hour south of where I am now. But it happened at a school. And the entire class, including the teacher, witnessed this thing. And you never hear about this stuff locally, the aerial school site, all the big ones with school kids. But
I did a book on schoolyard encounters.
Yeah.
So now you've got me all let's go.
There's some great ones. So it's in the middle of class. It's 9:30 a.m. And these are all I think they're 5th graders, maybe 6th graders. And they're in the middle of the class. And there's this kid, and he's kind of sitting near the windows, and his name's Paul. And he starts hearing this beeping sound coming from somewhere outside. So now he's distracted. And he's looking out the window. He's like, where the hell, what is that? So he just gets up in the middle of the lesson. And this is 65. It's, I'm pretty sure it's not a thing you do, but like, I remember getting in trouble just getting up in the middle of the class, and that was like the 90s. Anyway, this kid gets up and they're on the second floor and he's looking out the window and he sees this little black dot out in the sky. And it makes him gasp because he knows that's where the beeping's coming from. And so he has this audible gasp, and he gets the rest of the class's attention. So they all get up. The teacher's like, what the hell? So she's kind of standing behind the kids. All the kids are at the windows and they're looking at this black dot, and it's getting bigger. And then they realize it's getting closer, not bigger. And as it gets closer, they can see that it's actually this silver oval, and it's got this black bottom, and that's what they were seeing that far out. They couldn't see the silver part of the of this craft. So the UFO gets so close that it flies by the window, and it's descending, and it appears to be landing like behind this house that's near the school. So the kids are just like losing their mind. The teacher is like, what did I just see? So she goes and gets the principal. The principal comes in. He can see that the kids are like, super excited. The teacher is petrified. And she tells him what she saw. And he said, all the kids saw it too? And she's like, yeah. She's like, let's sequester them. Let's try to get them away from each other. I want to talk to each one of these kids individually. So he starts interviewing the kids one-on-one, and he's getting the same story. This little black thing, there's this beeping sound. And when I got really close, it was this oval with this black bottom that appeared to be spinning. It was almost like blurry.
But they all hear the beep?
Yep. And there was this antenna poking out the front, and there was this light on top that didn't appear to be attached. It was just kind of like hovering just above the craft, and it was pulsating. And that was where they figured the beeping sound was coming from. And he even asked them to draw it. And so a lot of them drew it on the chalkboard, and then he'd erase it, when the next kids would come in. And so he interviewed, 10, 11 of them. And so he calls the local newspaper. And he says, hey, has anybody reported, something weird in the sky? And they're like, yeah. As a matter of fact, we just got a phone call. It was a railroad worker. He was outside, and he was in the next town over. It's called Oakland. And it's, it's 10 minutes away. And he's outside on the tracks working on something, and he hears a beeping sound and looks up, and he sees this black dot thing fly over. He's like, well, that was weird. So he goes back to work. He hears a beeping sound again. It starts getting louder, and he looks up, and he sees a bigger black dot flying over him. And this happens like every 2 minutes, and it's getting bigger and bigger to the point where the last time he sees it, it's so low that he described it as like looking at the bottom of a teacup. It had this little black thing, but he could see the rest of the craft, and it flew over. And that's really the extent of his experience that he told the reporter, or told the newspaper. So the reporter, or whoever he's talking to at the newspaper, they're like, can we send a reporter to the school and like talk to you and the teacher and the kids and stuff? And the principal's like, yeah, sure. So reporter comes over, a lot of the kids repeat the stories, and the reporter's writing everything down, and then asks if the children can draw what they saw on the chalkboard. And he proceeded to take pictures of them next to the UFO on the chalkboard. And the story was published in the paper the next day. And, 4 of the kids got their pictures in the paper with the UFO standing next to it on the chalkboard. And, it was that story that I just told you. Now, an article right next to that UFO article was about meteorites being seen. And I think the University of Maine, like, they got quote from, a scientist over there. And they were talking about what kind of meteors they were or whatever. So I kind of came to the conclusion that since this wasn't this massive story, it kind of died with that article, that I wonder if that meteor story kind of eradicated the UFO story, where a lot of the townspeople were like, the kids just got excited and they were seeing meteors that day because it happened the same day or the same weekend, or the same week or whatever.
A strange beeping meteor.
Yeah, I know that descended and got really close and stuff, but that's like the crux of the story, and it was just fascinating and just an example of, I got to keep looking because there could be something else even more phenomenal that I just haven't found yet, and I'm sure of it. So just crazy.
Wow.
Really fun to find stories like that.
So I'm sure you got stories of people with direct contact or being taken on board as well.
Oh yeah. A lot of abduction stories, missing time stories. There was a famous abduction story that happened from here. It's kind of similar to the Travis Walton case. It's like the Maine version of that. It's 4 buddies, and they were in the woods in Maine, and they were college students, and they had come to Maine. They were from Massachusetts, and they came to Maine for their spring break, and were doing hiking and canoeing and stuff like that for a couple of weeks. And this happened in 76, I believe, and it was covered on Unsolved Mysteries, and I think they were on the Joan Rivers show. They kind of made the rounds, in the late 70s for their story. Or no, I guess it was the 80s when they started making the rounds, because they didn't know that whole story until later. But these 4 guys, 2 of them were twin brothers, which was interesting. And they had come to Maine.
I know what you're talking about. The Allagash.
Yeah, the Allagash abductions. So it's a very long, complex story, but long story short, a UFO was sighted with a bunch of people at a lake the first or second night that they were in Allagash, or in the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. And it was kind of there, and then it went away, but everybody at the lake saw it, and they're like, wow, that was pretty cool. We don't know what that was. And then it was like almost a week later, 4 or 5 nights later, the guys were getting really low on protein, and they needed to go fishing to catch, to have more protein to eat. And they went all day, and they just had the worst luck. So they were like out of food. So they're like, we got to go fishing tonight. Maybe the fishing will be better, not as many people around. So they build up a bonfire so they can find their way back in the darkness to where they're camped. And they build this big bonfire, and they said that they were getting like pretty big logs to throw on this bonfire because they wanted it to burn for a while. They wouldn't, they thought they were going to be out there for a few hours. So they all load up in the canoe. The fire's going. They were even concerned that it was too big. Like, crap, we're not going to start a forest fire, are we? They're like, no, stop worrying about it. So they go out onto the water. They see the UFO again. It's getting really low. Now there's a beam of light, and it's chasing them in the canoe. They cannot run it. The beam of light sucks them up, and they feel like their molecules are being, they're turned into molecules to like get up to wherever the ship is. They have a prototypical abduction, semen, fingernails, blood, all that stuff is taken from them. It's an awful experience. It's not fun. They don't feel as though they're being tortured, but they don't like it. They don't have permission. They, no consent. And that was a really big deal for them, that they felt that they were taken against their will. So they come back. The next thing they know, they're standing on the shore of the lake. One of the guys is still in the canoe. 3 of them are standing on the shore of the lake, and there's a UFO hovering above them. There's a beam of light on the lake still. It then gets sucked up into the light or to the UFO, and then the UFO takes off, and they're all like super groggy, and they're like, what the hell just happened? Because they have no memory of the stuff I just told you. They have no fish. They go back to their campsite. The bonfire is embers, so they know they've been gone a while. They're sitting at the picnic table, and they all just fall asleep. They wake up the next morning. They remember a light in the sky, but they don't remember the rest of the story. They just are lethargic. They're kind of just going through the motions for the rest of their vacation. They go back to school. They're back in Massachusetts. They're just going through the motions. They have girlfriends. They get married. Now they're in working life. 10 years go by, more. One of the guys starts having crazy dreams, and he's also suffering from seizures. And he's going to the doctor, and the doctor's like, like, has anything changed? And he's like, the only thing that's different is I started having these really scary dreams that I'm surrounded by these beings. And it seemed to happen on this trip that I took to Maine, like 10 years ago. And the doctor was like, I know somebody you should talk to. And it was Ray Fowler, who's, a legendary researcher and author in the field. He's authored, a ton of books and worked extensively with MUFON. And so the guy who was suffering from the seizures and was going to the doctor and having these nightmares, he goes to a MUFON symposium thing one year to find Ray Fowler. And Ray Fowler's in the middle of like signing books and somebody's telling him a story. And this guy's like, yo, this is what happened to me in Maine and blah, blah, blah. And Ray Fowler's like, wow, that's crazy. You know what I mean? But he's like, I'm signing books, like, kind of dismissing him because he's busy, And the guy's like, I have a twin brother. And Ray was just like, stop the presses. Let's go talk. So he takes the guy aside and they go have like this fairly brief conversation, but the twin thing really piqued Ray's interest. And he was in the middle of the Andreessen affair stuff that was going on, which is another famous case from Massachusetts. And so Fowler finally takes on the case of the Allagash Four, and he gets them with a hypnotherapist, and all of their experience comes out through these long form, multi-month hypnosis sessions with all four of them. It's super extent and super complex. But this massive, crazy abduction story comes out, and Ray Fowler wrote this amazing book about it. And I pillaged that book to tell as complete a story as I could in my book without just republishing Ray's book. I tried to put it in my words, but using, some of these quotes from these guys is just disturbing, especially when it comes to like the genital manipulation and just how sexual assault-ish that felt to them and how angry it made them. It was
got
just
the book somewhere back there. It was a very interesting book. I mean, he documented it really well. He's a good researcher.
He really is. He's so thorough. And he resides in Maine now, which is really, really cool. In the southern Maine area. Yeah. And he just put out a book, I think like a year ago, like another new book, and the gentleman's in his 80s. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't see him around much on podcasts and stuff.
No. And I was after I had wrote, well, I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Robbins, but I'd written this book a few years ago, Granite Skies, and Peter got a hold of it because he knew the subject that I was talking about. And so Peter emailed Ray on my behalf. I was like, this is a really great book from a Mainer guy, and I just wanted you to be aware of this gentleman. So I got an email from Fowler, which was amazing, So,
yeah, I wrote to him once. He very kindly wrote back, just because I couldn't find the second issue of the Andreessen story.
Yeah.
He sent it to me with a little nice note.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Cool guy.
There he goes. Yeah, such a nice fellow.
Actually, really nice. A lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so great because there's a lot of times when people say don't meet your heroes or whatever, and that actually has been true for me for some people, but
yeah,
but like Fowler, I'm not saying that they're all my heroes, but meeting like virtually meeting like Ryan Sprague and Fowler and Peter Robbins and all these guys, just so many of them are just so nice and kind and willing to help and assist you in your work, if that's why I'm reaching out or whatever. So it's a lot of good people in the field.
So what are a couple of other interesting stories from the book, if you can think of any?
Yeah, there's this really interesting missing time case, and it's kind of it's twofold. So this was like the mid-90s, and this woman was married at the time, and she had two teenage kids. I think they were 14 and 16, girl and a boy. And it was like just before 9 p.m. one night, and the kids wanted to stay up and watch a movie downstairs. And mom and dad just like let them have the TV, and they're like, we'll watch a movie upstairs in the bedroom. We'll get ready for bed and watch something up there. So mom's brushing her teeth in the bathroom, and she can hear her husband be like, what the hell's that light? She kind of sticks her head out of the bathroom, toothbrush in her mouth. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, there's this weird light in the sky. She's like, it's probably just the moon. He's like, no, the moon's over here. And she's like, huh. Okay. So she comes out and she looks out the window and sees it. And she's like, that is weird. I don't know what that is. And it was just like a ball of light, but it was moon size. It was big. So he's like, you want to go outside and look at it? She's like, sure. So she gets done brushing her teeth, and they start coming down the stairs, and the stairs lead into the living room, and mom and dad are going outside, and the kids are like, what the hell are you guys doing? They're like, oh, there's this weird light outside. You guys want to come see? And they're like, sure. So they open the front door and they step out onto the porch, and this light, from their perspective at this point, is on the side of the house. So they're all kind of like leaned over looking at the side of the house.
Right.
And they're staring at it. And sure enough, there's this big moon-sized light in the sky. And the actual moon's like over here. So like, that's weird. They're watching it for just like a moment or so. And all of a sudden, the light shoots to the front of the house. So now it's like right in front of them, and it's much lower. And they're all like, what the hell? And they're all watching it kind of in silence, in awe. And not even, just like 10 seconds later, it blinks out. And they're like, that was weird. And they're getting kind of cold, but they're like, what the hell was that? I don't know. So they start kind of piling back inside. And the kids look at the TV as soon as they walk inside. They're like, hey, the movie's over. Because they see the credits of a movie. And like, no, that was the previous movie. It's just before 9. You know what I mean? So like, the other movie's ending, the new one's going to start, they're like, no, like, we just saw the names of people that were in it, as the credits were going, like, that was the movie we're going to watch. Like, what time is it? So mom goes into the kitchen and looks at the stove, I think, the little clock on the stove. And it said it was 11 p.m. So the entire family lost 2 hours of time. And they knew this happened, and it was scary, but they didn't talk about it much. And it was just a weird thing that happened to them. None of them remembered, what happened during that 2 hours.
There's that weird thing where people don't talk about something they should be talking about.
Yeah. Like, yep, that was strange. And we acknowledge that, but there's no further discussion. Like, there's an odd acceptance, or we don't talk about it sort of thing that's just like understood without saying it, really. It's interesting.
It's a red flag in my mind.
Certainly a red flag. So the same woman, this is years later now, like a decade later, she's not married to the same man anymore. Her kids are grown. And she's living in a different area of the state, still in Maine, and she has a boyfriend. And he liked to go out into the woods and try to find antlers, and he would make furniture or art with the antlers, like lampshades and stuff with the antlers that he would find, just shedded antlers. So there was this area that he would like to go to, and to make it quicker, they would park at this area in the woods, and there was like this trail that they could take, and it was kind of like a big loop, and one would go one way and one would go the other way. Right. And they had walkie-talkies to talk with, and the woman took the dog with her, for protection or whatever. She just felt more comfortable having the dog with her. So they get there around 8 a.m. or so, and she's walking and he's walking, and there's no reason to have the walkie-talkies on yet. And she's been walking for about an hour, and she's like, where the hell am I? Like, she feels like she's lost. She's like, because they went here a lot. And she's like, did I get off trail? Like, what the hell? So she's kind of looking around. She's like, okay, well, I'm just going to turn around and start walking straight back where I was. So she turns around and she's walking. Now she's walking for like another half hour, and she's like, I don't know where I am. This is so crazy. So she kind of keeps walking, and then she sees like the peak of this mountain, like through the trees. And she's like, oh, I see where I am now. And she had actually walked further than she normally would have, which is not off trail, but this is like, there's a loop trail and there's a trail that kind of goes farther. And she went down the trail farther. She doesn't know how she did this, but going down farther, it's like a 3-hour one-way sort of thing on foot. So it should have been a 6-hour thing, She's like, how the hell did I get way the hell over here? And the dog was calm and chill the whole time. Like, there was nothing out of the ordinary. She was just walking in the woods. So now that she sees where she is, she knows she's got a hell of a trek back. So she turns on the walkie and hopes that she can get the boyfriend on the walkie. Turns it on, and there's this big burst of static, and then it goes dead. And she's like, oh no. So she keeps walking and keeps walking. And as she's walking, she can start, she's been walking for a while now, and she can start hearing a car horn beeping and beeping. And she's like, what the hell? So she's getting closer and closer, and it's getting louder and louder. Then she can hear her name being called. And she's like, oh, I'm back where the truck is. She can now see the truck. And she can see her boyfriend behind the truck. And she comes out of the woods. And he gets out of the car and like runs at her. And he's like angry. And he's like, where in the F have you been? And she's like, well, okay, so I was walking. I don't know how, but I got lost, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, dude, it's like noon. Like, this is crazy. You have been gone for 4 hours. Like, what happened? And she explained how she kind of kept walking, and she went down the wrong trail. And he's like, you shouldn't be back by now. If you went all the way to where you said you were to now, you shouldn't be here for like another 2 hours. Like, what? You know? And she's like, I don't know. So she had almost like conscious missing time, which is weird. You know what I mean? She didn't really know how to explain it. But that's like what she told me. It was really odd. And, you know, I didn't really know what to make of it, but I was asking about the dog. I was asking about, you know, were there strange smells? Did you feel weird at any point? You know, and no, I was just walking in the woods. Yeah. And she was like, a lot of it, I was just looking down, looking for antlers. You know, that's what you do. But, you know, I was gone for 4 hours. Where I should have been gone for 6 hours. You know, so that was weird. And she's like, I don't even know how I got off the trail, you know, because it's a trail. You know, it's very well marked. You know, so it was very confusing to her. And she ended up, it turns out she's had like a lifetime of these types of weird encounters. So those were just like two of like a ton of stuff that she has specifically like experienced throughout her life, you know. And she had a weird thing when she was young, you know, that she experienced. And you know, that's when it first started. And as far as she knows, it's like still ongoing. Like the last thing that happened to her was like 6 years ago. The last I've talked to her anyway, you know, was like 6 years ago, which is still pretty recent, you know. So
well, did you find any particular areas of Maine that are more active than others?
Yes and no, but it's more so like there tends to be flaps, if you will, you know, for certain years where there's a lot of sightings like all over. But there is a particular area, and I think it's 800 square miles, but I call it the Somerset Triangle, you know, and I'm just giving it the triangle name because of the word, what that insinuates, you know, but it's really like 800 square miles, and it includes like, it might be 20 plus towns, little tiny small towns that are all, you know, like in this 800 square mile area. And I think there's 300 documented sightings just in that area. And that's just like officially documented type things. But, you know, when you start looking at social media and stuff, because a lot, you know, Gen Z and even millennials, they're not going to move on to New Fork and all that. So that's old timer stuff. You know what I mean? And they're just sharing the stuff online, you know what I mean? On TikTok and Instagram or wherever they're, you know, even Snap and stuff. So, you know, when you take into account the unreported sightings, like you could be looking at upwards of like 800 or 1,000 sightings just in this one area alone, you know. And I document, like I had to dedicate a whole chapter just to that area with all of these crazy sightings that happened there. There's this one sighting that happened in the area where, you know, it's just a really brief thing, but it's so intense. And it was fairly recent, 2019. Don't quote me on the year. I don't have the book in front of me, but this woman, it was summer. This woman's on the phone, and she's got her door open, but the screen door closed. She's on the phone talking to a friend, and she's got her dog kind of sitting next to her. And the dog is sitting in front of the screen door looking outside. And she's not really paying attention to him, but he starts rah, 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 rah. And she's like, oh my God, shut up, you know, like, because she's on the phone. But the dog is looking at something outside and barking. So she finally like gets that realization, like, oh, I should pay attention to what the hell the dog is doing. So she kind of puts the phone, you know, to her chest or whatever, and starts looking outside. And she can see what she described as like a 6 or 7 foot tall gray alien type being, but it was knelt down, but she could see how long its legs were, with it knelt down, like a knee was up and the foot was on the ground, and its buttocks was towards the ground, and it was by a tree, and it was looking at the dog. The dog and this creature were eye locked, and the dog was just like, "Rah, rah, rah." So she just puts a hand on the screen door, and she doesn't even know why she did that. Was it to make sure it was locked? Was it to let the dog? She doesn't know why she did that, but that kind of gave the indication to the dog that it should shoot out of the house and go after it. So it did. This thing stands up super quick and starts running away. She's watching all of this happen. It's all happening in a matter of seconds. And she can see the alien start to disappear from the legs up, almost like it's cloaking itself as it runs away. Now it's disappeared. The dog is still running and barking at something, but it's gone. She doesn't even know what's happening. So she just like hangs up the phone and she starts calling to her boyfriend. Hey, Dad, like, oh my, get the, so he finally comes down. Oh, thank you very much, Scarlett. So he comes down and, she explains to him what the hell happened. So like he goes outside and the dirt or whatever by the tree is a little messed up, but there's no like footprints or anything, unfortunately. And the dog's not barking anymore, but it's like on high alert. It's just like, I got you guys. You know what I mean? Like if this thing comes back, I got you. But yeah, that's her story. It was really quick. That's basically the entire story. She hasn't seen anything since or before that she recalls. But there's an alien in a friggin' backyard, and the way she told this story, I believe her,
It's a good animal reaction story. Animals seem to pick up on this stuff.
Yeah. And man, it gave me goosebumps when she said it started disappearing while it was running from like the feet up,
I've heard that.
And so, yeah. And at one point she's just seeing like a torso, and it's just so brief, and then it's finally gone, but, and for the dog to keep running and barking, it's wild. But that, it's interesting.
Did you run into stories of, Bigfoot and other cryptozoological things?
For sure. Yeah. So in my state, Lauren Coleman lives here, and he's the godfather of, cryptozoology, in my opinion. So, and he also has a counterpart, and her name is Michelle Sawyer. And she has written a couple of books about strange things happening in Maine, UFO stories, Bigfoot, ghosts, and all that stuff. But just last year, 2 years ago, she put out a book called Bigfoot in Maine. Phenomenal story. But whenever I come across a really cool Bigfoot story, or even not a cool one, just anything Bigfoot, I want to give it to them. I can call them peers and friends now, which is really cool. Like Lauren was somebody I certainly looked up to for years. And then I finally met him at a conference, and, now we see each other at different conferences or whatever. And, he lives in Bangor now, and he's got a little bookstore there, and he's looking to take his museum that's in Portland and bring it up to Bangor. And that's been a whole process. I think he's looking at 2026 by the time it's open. Anyway, super nice guy. And it's just really cool to call these people peers. So when I get Bigfoot stuff, I send it to them. And when they get UFO stuff or otherworldly stuff, they send it my way, which is fun. So
very awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get any stories where Bigfoot and UFO are connected in any case, in any way?
Not from Maine, but there is a really interesting Dogman story from Maine.
Wow.
And it started off with balls of light. So this couple, they're an older couple. They moved to a town called Palmyra in Maine, which it's very rural. It's not remote, but it's rural. And the gentleman, his name's Eric, he had an accident at work, and it left him partly disabled. And they needed to move out of their current place, which I guess wasn't suitable for whatever disability he acquired from the accident. And they moved to this farmhouse in Palmyra. And the farmhouse, is this really cool old farmhouse. And in front of it was this man-made pond. And there's a lot of vegetation. And they got a lot of critters and stuff that would come on their land, deer and skunk and raccoon and, foxes and whatever. And they would drink from the pond and hang out. And they kind of developed a nightly ritual of going outside and sitting on the porch during the summer and drinking coffee, like after dinner, and it's nighttime. And they had this really high powered flashlight, and they like to shine it out and catch the animals, that they can't normally see during the day. And they like to catch them. And and just watch them drink from the pond or whatever they're doing. But it all started like when they moved in. So Eric is like unpacking a box, and he finished unpacking it, and he was like putting the box away, like breaking it down, and he walked by the living room window, and he saw these balls of light, or maybe flashlights or something, down by the wood line. This is like 100 yards from the house, and he's like, oh no, like, do poachers come here? Like, maybe people hadn't been living here for a while, and so they thought it was cool to come here to hunt at night or something. But now we're living here. Like, crap, I don't want hunters, especially poachers, in the woods, in my woods at night. But, he can't really go down there by himself and all that stuff. So he's got a son and a daughter, and the daughter has a boyfriend. So he asked the fellas if they could go down to that area in the morning and go check it out and see if you could tell if, people had been back there and stuff. And so they went down, and they're like, I guess it looks like it's kind of been trampled over, looks like, we can't tell if it's animal or people, but he saw these balls of light kind of moving around. He did the night before. The guys that went down there, they didn't see that. But anyways, so now we fast forward like a month or so. They're into this routine of sitting on the porch and, shining the light and stuff. And they're out there one night, they're drinking their coffee, and they can see something beyond this fence, but it's near the pond and it's drinking from the pond. So they shine the light, and they're like, what the hell is that? And it's this thing with this huge head, and it's kind of, lapping up water. And, the light is on it, and it kind of like looks up at them. And then it stands up. And it stands to like 7 feet high. And he knows it's about 7 feet high because like there's a shed nearby, and its head is like at the top of the shed. And he knows the shed is like 7 or 8 feet tall. So this thing stands, and it's a bipedal thing, that's hairy and it's huge. And the wife, she's got the flashlight on it, and she's like kind of tracing it with this big flashlight. And they're seeing that, it's this brown short hair, and they can see the snout, and they can see ears coming up from the top. So it basically looks like a hairy human with like a dog or wolf face. And then they can see some eye shine on either side of it. And then that eye shine like stands. And then they put the light to that side and to that side. And it's 2 more of these creatures, and they're about the same height. And they're like, oh, expletives. But and again, this is all happening in a matter of seconds. You know what I mean? And so the light actually scares these creatures, and they take off running, and they go to the, like, by the side of the house. So they're like, let's go inside. They go inside and call the cops. And the cops are like, well, we don't deal with that. You need to call
Ghostbusters.
You got to call the Rangers. You know what I mean? That deal with like animal stuff. And like, okay. All right. So they call the Rangers, and they are a little bit more, they're less dismissive. Right. Almost like they've heard this before. And they're like, we're not coming out, but go inside and lock the door. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, that's all we've got for you. And he's just like, oh my God. So he hangs up the phone, and he's like, here's what they said. And she's like, oh my God. And he's like, I got to go get my guns. He kept the guns in the shed, and that was the whole thing with him and his wife. She didn't want guns in the house. So they're in the shed, and he's partially disabled, and she's not going anywhere outside, but he wants to go get at least one gun. She's begging him not to go, but he's like, I got to. So she goes upstairs because the daughter's home. She goes upstairs to the daughter's bedroom. He goes back outside. He's outside now, and he's kind of like got his back up against the door. And he's like, oh God, okay, I don't see them. And he starts walking and he starts making his way down the steps. It's not many steps of the porch. And he gets to like the bottom step of the porch. And now he's awash in light. And he's like, whoa. And it's the motion light. The motion light caught him. And he's like, well, it seemed like light scared these guys. So cool. And the motion light reaches the shed, so he's like, I'll be okay. Like, as long as I can make sure the motion light goes off, I'm going to be okay. So while he's having this thought in his head, which is apparently taking forever, the motion light goes out. And he's like, oh God. So he starts doing this again. The motion light comes back on. But as it comes back on, he can see that the creatures are back at the fence, which is near the shed. And he's like, oh no. And then the light goes off again. And he's like, I can't, there's no way I'm going to make it to the shed. There's no way. So he starts backing up the stairs, gets to the door, gets inside the door, locks it. She's like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I couldn't get the guns and blah, blah, blah. And so she's like, come upstairs. And she actually has to come downstairs and like help him get up the stairs. And so now they're all in the daughter's bedroom. And the daughter's been sleeping through all of this. So they're trying to wake the daughter up and they're having a hard time doing it. And they're looking out the window of the daughter's bedroom. And now they see 5 of these creatures looking up at them from the ground.
Bizarre. Wow.
Yeah. And then they see that they see like a 6th one, but it's kind of like on the back of another one. And they're like, are they having sex? Like, what? And it turns, and they finally figure out that they think it's a juvenile and it's like on the back of its mother.
Piggyback. Wow.
Yeah. And then they scatter. And they're like, oh God, what are they going to do now? And they tried to get the daughter up. She got up at one point and looked out the window, but they were gone. I can't remember if they were gone or not, but she was like, oh, whatever. And like goes back to sleep. And they start hearing all this pounding and things walking on the roof and like pounding on the walls. Like they don't know if these things don't know how to, that they don't know if windows are breakable, or that, they're so dumb and they don't know how to open doors or break through doors or windows, or if they're just terrorizing them. But they're hearing scrapes and bangs.
I haven't heard anything quite like this one. Wow.
It's wild. So during this time, the daughter wakes up and is like, what is happening? They're like, well, we're trying to tell you. So finally, the daughter looks out the window. She actually gets a glimpse of one of these. And she's like, oh my God. So this is happening until like, it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning now. They're all dead tired. And they're like kind of huddled together on the floor, leaning against the wall that's near the window of the daughter's bedroom. And they're so exhausted at this point that they just fall asleep.
Wow.
But the banging and all that stuff is still happening. But nothing has breached the house. So the sunlight coming in from the window wakes them up. And it's like 6 a.m., 6:30, something like that. So they barely got any sleep. But they look out the window. All the banging and nonsense is done. They look out the window. They don't see anything. So they finally, gather up the courage to like go outside. And they see wild footprints everywhere. It's like these big feet and like claws. And apparently there's pictures and all that, which I've never seen. There's scratches and claw marks on the side of the house.
Something to see. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And apparently it was documented, but there's this other stuff. The woman's name, boy, what's her name? I think it's Shelley Martin. And this is like, they were on TV talking about this, sharing their name. So I'm not giving anything away. But she said like this other really disturbing, haunting, religious, paranormal stuff also happened during this time. Like she won't talk about. So there's some stuff that they're holding back, So anyways, I guess long story longer. I thought this was going to be a little shorter. Sorry, but long story longer. Finally, like a month later, they're able to move out. They go to a different area. I think a year or so after they're out, Shelley is, researching bipedal wolf-like creatures and finds out that there's a thing called Dogman and finds out that there's a prominent researcher, Linda Godfrey, and reaches out to her. And then Godfrey interviews her and gets the whole story. And Godfrey puts the address in the book. So my girlfriend and I went out there last year. And the property is owned by somebody else now. And it looks like it's a business. It might be a working farm now. So we didn't want to, go on the property, obviously. But there's oddly and weirdly, there's a really small church right next to this property. It's got this like cool archaic cross, on it. Like it reminds me of like the church in like Silver Bullet or something, the movie, Stephen King movie, Silver Bullet. And or just a small town, really small church. So it was just like a perfect setting. So we're taking pictures of the church, but now we're taking like telephoto, pictures of the property from this other property. So we have pictures of the farm and the tree line and where all this stuff happened. So it was really cool to like go out to the area and see this area. And what's interesting, and we didn't know this, and Godfrey didn't even write about this, I don't think. R.I.P. Godfrey if you did. I'm so sorry. But there's a forest, what do you call it? Like a protected forest, literally across the street.
Wow, preserve.
Yeah, a reserve. Thank you so much. There's a reserve right across the street, and it was wild. And I don't recall ever seeing that in any writings about this. And they even had this story on the sci-fi television show Paranormal Witness. I think the episode is called Wolf Pack, if anybody wants to look it up. I think I remember watching it.
Stories are. You know what, Nomar? We're reaching the end of the show. I didn't even get to the questions. People are in chat like, hey, this is the questions time. But
is there just one I can answer?
I'm sure there's a couple of them here that, let me see.
I'm so sorry. I just
No, it's my fault. I didn't want to cut you off. It's too interesting. Matt Owens is asking, can you suggest organizations and or events to get involved with in Maine?
Yeah, organizations, I'm not too sure. I mean, there's a ton of paranormal groups, and a lot of them are really great. There's some that aren't. And there's lots of events that happen. There's a yearly event called Parafest, and that's really fun to go to. And that's a big convention that happens in Vassalboro, Maine, which is kind of like, central Maine area. And that happens like every October. And then there's a thing at Fort Knox. We have a fort here that never saw war time, but it was occupied by soldiers. And so it's a major tourist attraction. And ghost hunters went there. When that show, the first iteration of Ghost Hunters, they came up.
MUFON probably has meetings somewhere in Maine, right?
Yeah, there's some meetings for MUFON in southern Maine, but they are sporadic at best, from what I can tell. So that's a little
Here's
tough.
Another question from Fred Fredericks. Where can we buy Nomar's book?
Yeah. If you search it in Google, you'll find places, but Amazon's got everything. I have my own online store, so if you get stuff directly from me, they'll be signed and autographed and bookmarks, stickers, and all that good stuff. Which is Slevik store .company.site, and I'm sure Preston will have some links or whatever. But but if you just go on Google and Google Nomar Slevik books, a bunch of sites will come up, and you'll be able to get them.
Okay, I might go a minute over. I think we'll be okay as long as we don't go over 2 hours proper. Since we started 8 minutes after, I'm going to chance it and just pull up another question real quick. This is from Fun Talks TV. Do you think communicating with these beings is beneficial for us? Do you think they really want to waste their time on humans?
I think some of them, sure. I think there's probably a lot of different species, just like there's a lot of different types of people. And some people think it's fun to like talk and interview other people. And, I'm sure there's species out there that would think it's fun and interesting to talk to us. And I think there's others that just prefer not to waste their time. And they probably, we just probably don't know about them. Or there's probably some out there that want to see us, see harm come to us. So.
All right. Well, I wish I had more time for questions, guys.
I'm so sorry.
Time ran away from us. And sorry, Dolly dropped out. There's family stuff going on tonight. So she had to attend to that, but all is well. And any last quick words in 30 seconds you want to leave our people with?
Just thank you so much for having me, and show kindness and a non-judgmental ear to anybody. You never know what people are going through. So just kindness.
Yeah, well, it looks like people in chat really enjoyed having you, and I know I did.
Awesome.
So thanks, Nomar. And
Sure.
definitely check out his books. And people are like, hey, this is all cool. So fun.
Very cool.
We're going to have you back on again because we didn't get to dive into any of your other books, or really, I know there's more in this 465-page book that we can get into. But yeah, thanks so much, Nomar. I really appreciate it. And wait, hold on one second here. Let me just give thanks to all you guys who donated super chats. I really appreciate it. Heidi and Namaste and Jen saw that as well. Thank you guys. It's awesome. I also need to give out the call signs one last time that we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana. Also on YouTube, Facebook, and Roku. Thank you guys all for listening. Thanks, Nomar. It was awesome. We're definitely going to invite you back.
For sure.
And yeah, that's it for tonight. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Join you next week. Bye for now.